Hello and welcome to this edition of Dr. K Psychobabble. And I picked the topic today, deception. And I'm not kidding. I'm not trying to deceive you on that. We're going to discuss lying and the purposeful expression in order to get people to believe something that is not true. So let's take a look at an example. Here is your very pleasant 3 to 4 year old. She's an angel. She's a gift from above. And she's a liar. She is. Kids at 3 years old, right around that age, begin to lie. Now, there's a lot of different ideas that go about why we end up lying and, motivations and all that stuff, and whether or not little kids have the ability to conceptualize that what they're making up is somehow different from reality. But in fact, the reality of this whole thing is that lying is awesome. Lying, as it appears in the age of 3, represents a very important stage in cognitive development. It is a signal that something has happened. They become cognitively aware of others and that their thoughts are their own and they're different from other people and their thoughts, and that is called theory of mind. Theory of mind, the ability to understand that somebody else's perspective of the world is different than yours, is the key to developing perspective taking and empathy. So, those first lies early in life are a time for celebration. They do not lead to a lifelong pattern of lying. What they do lead to is a pathway of understanding that people are different than they are. Take this into consideration. A child is in a room and their mom is in the other room, can't see what's going on, and they accidentally break something. So the mom comes rushing in, and because the child understands that the mother didn't see what happens, it's quite possible that the child could come up with a story, an alternate story, that she believes she can pass on to her mom, and her mom, if she believes that story, will act differently than if she knew the truth. That ability is called theory of mind, and it's an incredibly important piece of development. So now let's look at lying later on in life, when we actually don't tell the truth, and what does that mean in terms of our interactions with others. So when we encourage people to believe something is not true, when we engage in big and little lies, we may say, no, I'm not having an affair. Or we may say something really, really small, like there was no butter at the store, when you actually forgot to pick up the butter, right? That little lie. And then there's the big lie. Then there's this concept that we have of white lies, which are innocent lies, or maybe they're lies that we're doing in order to preserve someone's self-esteem or something like that. We'll get to that in a little bit. And then we have the notion here that trust is the actual foundation of social life. So when we are interacting with other people, our assumption presumably would be, if I ask a person a question, they're telling me something truthful. If I stop someone on the street and ask them for directions, my stranger, no matter what city, whatever, I'm going to presume that that individual is going to tell me the truth. Now, that reciprocity, that expectation of reciprocity, is that the individual will tell me the truth, because by participating in that social contract that we learn, that of reciprocity, if I'm truthful to you, then it's going to come back to me. Other people will be truthful to me. When I ask for directions, they'll be truthful to me. So when people ask me for directions, I'm going to be truthful to them. And this basis of understanding of truth, communicating between individuals, is the foundation of civilization. Really, very much is. So, different ways in which we lie. Sometimes we omit information, lying by omission. You don't include key information for someone to understand the whole story. We may deny something, like I didn't forget that they had butter. I didn't forget to get the butter. They didn't have any butter. That kind of denial of a situation. I could exaggerate a situation and make something bigger than it is. And I can also lie by agreeing with somebody. I can go along. They may say something that I don't really believe, but in order to enhance the cohesion, or in order to enable myself to connect to that individual or to connect to that group, I may profess belief and will say, yeah, I think that's true as well. And that's a kind of lie. So what's going on with each one of these? Here we have lies by omission, and denial and agreement and exaggeration are used to preserve relationships and self-serving. These are the two categories of motivation that lead people to tell lies. Under preserving relationships, we might be being kind. Person asks you a question, and the truth is a little hard to swallow. We might be saying something because we're trying to be kind to that individual. It might be helpful to the individual to keep trying or something like that. And then ultimately, yes, for all the guys in the audience, that dress looks amazing. You know what I'm talking about. These are ways in which we communicate with our partners, and they ask, how does this look on me? We'll get to why that's a little dicey sometimes in just a second. Under self-serving lies, it's a way for us to get what we want, to increase our own personal social value when we exaggerate something, for example, and to preserve self-esteem. This is even to the point that we can self-deceive ourselves. We can convince ourselves of a lie and begin acting in such a way that that lie is true, so that as far as the entire external world is concerned, we're acting in a way that confirms the truth of this particular situation, to the point that after time someone can develop sort of a neurotic belief in it themselves. I'm not sure if neurotic is quite the right word, but the notion that an individual can start to believe and be self-deceiving in terms of their understanding of reality just because they've repeated it to themselves so many times. Now the question might say, kind of goes back to, you're being kind, you're supporting people and stuff like that. Is lying always bad? So, we have motives include to get what they want, to protect, to harm. These are ways in which lies. Avoiding difficult talk. It might not be good to withhold important feedback at specific times. Now, granted, I have a granddaughter, and she shows me her art, and I've taken art appreciation classes, and I'm still going to say that what she's done is fantastic, even though if I actually critiqued it using the tools that I was taught in my art appreciation class, it's not a very good drawing. It is I am probably, actually, I don't really think I'm lying, because I'm probably telling her that I think that her effort at drawing things is awesome. I'm praising the effort of it, regardless of the necessarily objective sort of quality of that art. But sometimes, like these two examples say, we might be lying to get what we want or to protect people, and certainly there's the harmful lies, but maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we have to find a way to help individuals understand the truth of themselves. And truthfully, even in a relationship, when we have that notion of, yes, the dress looks awesome, I believe that true intimacy in a relationship is achieved at the point at which an individual can be constructively critical in things like that. And isn't that what we want from our most intimate friends and partners? Is if I'm going to, make the effort for me to look good or to say something or I do something and I have truly maybe looking at negative outcomes from that, I want my partner to be honest with me. They're the person that should be able to do that and be truthful with me. And they don't have to build some sort of structure around keeping my self-esteem alive. They're the individuals that I can trust to engage with me in a truthful manner. Trust itself, even white lies erode trust. Little lies that build up over time actually impact trust. And again, thinking about that, trust is a foundation of our society. And are there altruistic lies? Like I talking with children, grieving people. What do we say? There was an example in one of the resources that I read in preparation for this particular video. They talked about, there may be a doctor that's talking to a wife whose husband has passed away and may tell that wife that the husband passed peacefully when they may not have. And those are sort of judgment calls about in terms of, how truthful do we need to be, yet understanding at the same time that we're really walking an edge in terms of that individual responsibility we have to maintain that social contract of trust when we're around other people. Now, so how can we tell? How can we tell when someone's lying to us? So first, eye contact itself. Shifty eyes, people avoiding eye contact and whatnot. Those are indicators of lying. Body language, the hands on their neck, actually they're kind of leaning their foot on the outside edge, compressing their lips together, those kind of things. Speech cues, like rambling or less certain words, kind of like iffy, so it kind of indicates that the person is making things up, the ums and the ahs. And of course we have lie detectors. The polygraph machine has been used for decades to get confessions from people. I'm going to pause for dramatic effect because, in fact, none of this works. None of this works. Eye contact, shifty eyes, avoiding eye contact, holding the neck, all of these compression lips, the speech cues, and lie detectors themselves, polygraph machines, those have been shown to not work for a very, very long time. It is extremely difficult to determine if someone is lying or not. Some people may claim that they possess some sort of ability, but none of this has really been demonstrated in the literature. And people can become extremely good at convincing others. Again, there's a bit of convincing themselves. And ultimately, if you truly believe something yourself, you're at that point where, I'm going to act in every way I can, I'm going to make this true, then it's literally impossible to tell if someone's lying outside of having external evidence that says the opposite. So none of those factors actually work. So in fact, when you think about eye contact, when somebody is lying, they actually tend to have more eye contact, an effortful way, like I'm doing to you right now, and really telling you the truth. Maybe it's creepy, I don't know. But people tend to have more eye contact when they are lying rather than I was at the store the other day, that kind of avoiding thing that actually has not held true in the evidence within the psychological literature. So our ability to determine whether someone is deceptive or not is very, very challenged. Now, when it comes to the lie detector, now it's interesting, if you want, read up on the history of the lie detector. It is an instrument that is still being used. It's been used in a very divisive way, but lie detector information cannot be submitted to court. It is not considered by the court to be substantive evidence of anything. However, the marketing campaign for lie detectors, the machines that came out, this is quite a long time ago, turn of the century, coming out, not a little later than turn of the century. The machines coming out that we could use, this was a promise. We were just wondering, could there possibly be a way to get people, to get police officers who are interrogating individuals to tell them the truth? A machine was very much being desired by that time. A little bit of history of that. Have you ever heard of the phrase, the third degree? Someone's giving me the third degree. Now, it's an intensive interview process, okay? In early policing, there were 3 degrees of interrogation, and they increased in intensity. The third degree involved physical violence. So when individuals were being interviewed and the police thought that they were guilty, they could move all the way up to the third degree, which was hitting them and punishing them, and kind of the things that we, waterboarding and stuff like that we hear of today. Those were called third degree methods. Now, there was an uproar in our society about third degree type of treatment from police officers, so there was very much an open market for, can we develop a machine that will replace the third degree? And along came the invention of the lie detector, the polygraph, which does not effectively do it. But here's the thing. If somebody believes that the polygraph works and they're hooked up to it and they're told by they're actually deceived by the person who's using the polygraph, saying this machine is going to detect when you're lying. And if the person believes that, they're more likely to confess to anything that they've done. Now, that tests have been done and people have been able to fool the machine. There's individuals that have been able to they can say the same thing to an interviewer, in experimental conditions, and they can make it look like he's lying and make it look like he's telling the truth. I mean, it's just an unreliable machine, but it remains in use in some areas of police work because it elicits confessions. That's it. So we're kind of stuck having to deal with, how do we know when somebody's lying? Now, we do encounter, and I pulled out 2 areas of deception that occur in our society and kind of give a little bit of deep dive into those. And those 2 areas are the concept of what we would call maybe a pathological liar and the concept of fake news. So we have an individual who lies consistently, and we have institutions that push out information in order to create and change public opinion on something in a way that's untruthful. Now, so if we look at each one of these, yes, pathological liars do occur. They lie for no sort of any of those motivations that we've seen before, but also in addition to those motivations, possibly personality disorder associated with that, the ability to control other people, gaslighting, when we're constantly telling somebody lies and helping them, convincing them that the reality is something else and that their own perceptions, they can't rely on those and those kind of things. Very, very powerful abusive control mechanisms that can occur. And then individuals can keep pathological lies alive because to avoid the disappointment of people around them. If an individual, let's say, has been lying about their medical condition for a really long time in order to avoid working or responsibilities or something like that, after a while, consider the consequences. If they ever came up and said that was a lie, you'd be looking at maybe decades of time of a lie. I mean, the motivation becomes less and less to ever reveal that individual was in fact lying. So quite a lot of motivation to not tell the truth in that case. In terms of fake news as we use it now, certainly in the political realm, is not new. It is not new. It has previously been known as propaganda. Propaganda has been used throughout history by governments, by military, by dictators, by, probably the most famous in our collective consciousness, of course, the Nazi regime in Germany had a propaganda machine that built up and took advantage of people's preconceptions of things and built up a mindset that led to the most destructive war in history. So propaganda, we probably should call it what it is. Instead of calling it fake news, probably let's call it propaganda. Then we can have that sort of rich conversation about what that is. Now, what propaganda does today is it puts the burden of proof on the viewer, the consumer of that information, and that's quite a burden, because although we can develop a healthy skepticism about the information, we are still charged with doing the background research to find if something is true or not. We are, however, busy people, and we may choose sources of information, decide that those are our sources that we're going to trust, and there we go. That we have actually given that source a very, very powerful tool to manipulate our thinking. Now, for small things,
okay, I found this on the web for a very, very powerful tool to manipulate our thinking. Check it out.
And candidates and policies and perceptions of other people and whatnot, these are very, very critical issues in our time when we pick single sources. Now, there's also the quality of those sources, the notion of, this is part of that critical thinking, the notion of understanding, does the source have anything to gain from me believing what they're saying? Right at that point, you have to question the source, because essentially they're trying to sell something. It's like commercials on TV. If you see medication commercials all the time where people are, they're displaying happy lives and they're barbecuing and they're playing with the kids and running on the beach and stuff like that. And these are pleasant things, and you're experiencing these things, and immediately you got to say, well, they're trying to sell me something. I mean, I would like that. I would like that lifestyle. I would like all those things. But is this true if at the end the individual stands to gain by my simple belief that this is true? Probably one of the most important aspects of our critical thinking as consumers. It's vital to understand that everything on the web, not everything, but a lot of the things on the web, you're familiar with the web at the end, they have the three letters at the end, .com. .com is short for commercial. When they began the mechanisms of creating domain names, that's what those are, like say tribute to eltonjohn.com, the website for my band. The .com indicates that we're trying to sell something, or it's a commercial website. So everything that's on that website is designed to get you to come to a show. Or everything on Amazon.com is designed to bring you, the customer, to a product. Everything on Google.com is there to sell something. That is how those industries work. So each one of those sources, we have to kind of go with some healthy skepticism because of that ulterior motive to convince you of something in order to get something from you. This applies to every candidate, no matter which side of the aisles that you're on, it applies to all of those. All this information should be checked against valid, scientific, reputable resources, at least more than one resource of different wavelengths, kind of thing, in order for us to understand that. Because of that slide that I put on, that we think we can detect when somebody's lying, but all they need to be is a really good public speaker, like Hitler was. And people can believe that. It's amazing for us to look back at Hitler's actual speeches and consider that was like motivating what he said, but it was at the time. Different motivational speakers now speak differently, but can be just as deceptive. So that's my little lecture on deception. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe subscribe to Dr. K's Psychobabble, and I will see you the next time. Take care.